welcome to the Milton Artists Guild Social Sunday. This week we are going to be making birch trees. I'm very excited to show you this process. In your kit you will have a piece of paper, two pieces of paper for you, a paintbrush, and a set of watercolor paints. The easiest way to work with dried watercolor paints is to just put a little bit of water on them each as you get started so that they rehydrate and are easier to mix. Alright, let's get started. Today we are going to paint birch trees. So we'll start with a little bit of blue and a little bit of brown. And what I've done here is I have pre-soaked my watercolors so they rehydrate a little bit. And I'm gonna just start by making 3 sets of parallel lines, which will form our tree trunks. Now that we have our 3 sets of vertical lines, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of brown paint and we're going to just make a little bit of edge on here on some of them, so we make the little nodules that the trees are known for, birch trees are known for. And we'll do a couple of little stripes across just to get us started with some texture. One of the best things about watercolor is that it is such a nice material to work with because it is so transparent, and it is really easy to work with because it's all about layering. What I'm doing here is I'm making little arced lines to show that the tree is round, because these are tree trunks, and so they go around the bend a little bit. So now that I have my basic tree forms, I'm going to rinse my brush, and then I'm going to start with some blue, and we'll paint in the background. So we're going to do blue sky here. And if I don't want to see my watercolor brush strokes, I can add more water on top, and this will make it a little bit more watery looking, and I can always go back and add more color later if I would like to. However, you will notice as you're painting with watercolor, a sheet of paper will start to potato chip a little. You'll start to see a little bit of arc. If this persists when it is drying, you can always put a little bit of water on the back, and that will help to straighten out the sheet. Alright, now that our background is painted in, we're going to give this a minute to dry. Once your watercolor is dry, you may then begin to paint again. The reason that you wait for it to dry is that when you want to create colors, if you paint over wet, you will pick up the color that's underneath, which is an interesting way that watercolor works. So now that this is dry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add shadows on the outside of each of my birch trees. And so what I'm doing is I'm making a very watered down blue-brown that will allow me to paint in the shadows. Now that I've painted in the shadows, I'm going to wait for these to dry. Now that my shadows are dry, I'm going to go over them with a little bit of blue. So I'm going to make a really nice watered down blue. I'm going to go over them with a little bit of blue, and I'm going to carry the blue in past the shadow. So what I'm trying to do is create a 2-layer shadow here, where the innermost layer, the lightest layer, is just a baby bit blue, and I'm going over the blue-brown, which in my painting looks a little bit greenish because the brown has some yellow in it. Go over that, and then this will create a layered shadow effect. So one of the fun things about watercolor is that, generally speaking, you don't use white. Instead, you paint in all around, treating the white of the paper as the white. So here I'm just going back in with the brown and making our shadows just a little bit darker here on the edges. And I'm going to extend out some of my little lines to create our arcs. Paint a few more of those in, because birch trees have those really distinctive lines and cracks. Now I'm going to wash my brush really, really well, because I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red to make a warm orange. And water that down quite a lot. So we have just a very faint color here. And once my painting has dried enough that I feel like I can go over it, I'm just going to come into these brown areas with a little bit more warmth with our warm yellow and red, so that we have just a little extra color in here. And then I'm going to really wipe my brush off and do just a tiny bit in on the tree trunk itself vertically to give it just a little extra warmth and a little extra color. And if when you're painting you find that you've made a little oops, you can always get just a tissue or a paper towel and dab the wet paint like this. And that will help to pick up the color and you won't see it nearly as much. Alrighty, and there we have it. Here's your birch tree painting. Thank you so much for joining us for the Social Sunday, and we look forward to seeing you next week.